Hey guys, Daz here from Turtle Reformation. Now on today's video tutorial, it's part 3 of our hidden stresses where we're talking about hormones. The last 2 videos we spoke about diet and how diet alone can affect our hormones, which in turn will affect our results. The video 2 was speaking about how exercise has a massive impact on hormones. And today we're going to be talking about sleep and how sleep has a huge impact on our hormones, and vice versa, how hormones can have a massive impact on our sleep. So these are all vital areas that you should be looking at when it comes to whatever program or protocol you're after in terms of getting results. So we've just chosen 3 of the obvious ones and the most common ones that people need to work a lot more on. There's a lot more to this topic. That's why we are explaining the hidden stresses in terms of the hormones, the immune system, detoxification, digestion, the environment, and our neurotransmitters. They're ones that most people don't seem to know much about, or they need a lot of extra help to understand it and to put a protocol in place, and that's what we're here for. So let's get straight into it. Let's work out number 1, how can sleep or lack of sleep affect our hormones? And of course, most people these days just don't get enough sleep. There's either too much work to be done, or there's too much exciting stuff to be watching on TV. Don't know how that is, because most programs are pretty crappy these days, and they're just simply not getting to bed early enough. Especially if you're training, and most people who are probably watching this video, you are probably someone who trains a lot because you're trying to achieve some sort of result. If you don't sleep and get enough sleep in the right time of sleep, you are definitely going to hinder your results or make it harder to get there, but also creating too much stress and therefore a rippling effect for the rest of who knows, for the rest of your life or forever, how long this protocol or program you're on is for. So getting to bed is important. The time, we always say to people, we want you to start to wind down by 9 o'clock. This obviously has an impact depending on daylight savings, for example, and the amount of light that we're exposed to, which we're going to go through that. But we always say, get to bed, wind down about 9:30, be in bed. Hopefully you're falling asleep around the 10:30 mark. And even that for some people, especially these days, a lot of people are under a lot more stress than others. They need to get to bed earlier, full stop. So basically between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., the body goes to work to repair itself physically. So that should be a number 1 clue, that if you are exercising, and in particular exercising quite intensely, you need to get to bed. Otherwise you're going to miss out on that first physical repair. So important. If you're missing out on that physical repair, it means we're also not going to be able to replenish and really get our hormonal structures working to their optimal capability. So that's very important. Then between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., it's more neurological repair. So there's some pretty interesting bits of information for you, and hopefully it's going to make you think a little bit differently about, I really need to get to bed. That reality TV show really isn't going to help me in the long run. So that's very important. Also too, broken sleep. So a lot of people say that they can fall asleep, but then they wake up all the time, for whatever reason, whether it's a partner that wakes them up, or there's some other hidden stresses going on that's waking them up. Now, some of the reasons why that is, which also warrants some more further investigation. Number 1, blood sugars. Depending on the meal you have before you go to bed, it can actually impact your blood sugars. Now don't forget, regulating your blood sugars is a massive job for the body. It utilizes so many different systems of our human sort of build up to try and regulate the blood sugars. So if you do have blood sugar issues throughout the middle of the night and we crash, what happens is cortisol is released to try and rebalance your cortisol, or your blood sugar level, and that will wake you up. So that's one area. It's probably the easiest one we look at first of all. We look at the diet before you go to bed, and again, that's why diet's in this part, the hormone sort of little video tutorial we're talking about. Number 2, Infections or pathogens. You'd be surprised how many people do have either an infection or a pathogen, or in other words, a parasite. Maybe they've traveled overseas and they've been sick while over there. They pick something up. Sometimes you don't even have to travel overseas. You can pick it up from anywhere these days. When you do have some form of infection, in particular a parasite, they have an opposite day-night cycle to us. So while we're sleeping, they're awake, going about their normal daily processes, which is eating, pooping, dying, doing all sorts of stuff. Obviously, when that happens, it triggers our immune system. Boom, we're awake. So these are some reasons as to what might wake us up in the middle of the night, cause some disruption through all of our hormones, in particular our cortisol and melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. So there's a couple of little investigative sort of areas that you might want to look at if you do have that issue. Now also too, the environment that we sleep in at night time is very important as well. If we do have some external stresses, so in terms of like all the electric magnetic fields, so if you've got clock radios, TVs and all sorts of stuff around our head, if you have Wi-Fi going throughout the night too, your mobile phone, all that sort of stuff is a stressor. There's so much more research on this now and what it is actually doing to the whole body, in particular the hormones as well. Okay, so that's a very important one. The quality of the air is also just as important as to what are you breathing throughout the night? What are you exposed to? Are you in a very dense room where there's not a lot of ventilation? So there's some extra things that we might want to look at. Again, this is just creating extra stress, and if we don't get the sleep, we're going to have some issues through here. We're creating more and more stress, which is further throwing us into a hormonal imbalance, okay? Just stress in general, going to bed, either mentally stressed from the day, you've got a bad job, bad environment at the moment with a partner or something like that. Of course, that again is going to also play with this as well, in particular our neurotransmitters. Now, one interesting thing is that melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, most of it is produced in our gut. So if you do have any digestive issues, if you've got a bad diet, or you do have some chronic stresses or breakdown in the body, you're gonna have some melatonin production issues. Now this is a very, very important part of our whole journey that we're trying to go through. That's why our gut is so important, and that's why we work a lot on that. So understanding, again, if we went through this in the second video where we spoke about how exercise can affect everything, we need throughout the day, we wake up with a higher amount of cortisol, which just gets us up in the morning, and then it's meant to dip at the end of the day, okay? As we go through the day and as the evening starts to come in, we want to be boosting our melatonin levels as much as we can to regulate sleep. That's important. So if you have anything that is stimulating cortisol throughout the nighttime, obviously we're going to have a very, very restless or hindered sleep throughout the night, which is going to continually add stress to our hormonal structures. So there's a couple of reasons as to why we might not sleep very well. There's a lot more to that, but that's just some basic overview ones that you can hopefully start investigating right now as soon as you finish this video. So what can we do about it? Number one, get to bed. If you don't have any issues with sleeping, you're a very lucky person. Get to bed. If you are training, if you are trying to achieve a certain results, again, whether it be weight loss, fat loss, muscle gain, athletic performance, or a health building program, especially if you're on a health building program, get to sleep. The body needs that recovery. That is very, very important. Number two, if you think you do have some issues with blood sugar or some infections or pathogens, we recommend doing some lab testing, some functional lab testing. There's some great ones available. We run them here as well. If you do think you have some issues, you're probably the person that craves a lot of sugars or carbohydrates, constantly hungry, obviously waking up in the middle of the night, but also if you're waking up hot and sweaty in the middle of the night, that just means that your immune system is really going to work to try and kill whatever's inside there. So check some lab tests. Let us know if you do want to run through some of those. Assessing what you have for dinner. Now, in the first video, we spoke about diet, and we also spoke about metabolic typing. When we eat the right foods for your metabolic type, we start to balance things out, including blood sugars. So if you are waking up because of blood sugar issues, and we're creating too much stress because of blood sugar issues, eating foods or a meal that's right for your metabolic type will help that, which will help this, which will make sure you sleep better, which is very important. And then check your environment. Make sure before you go to bed, look at your room. If you have a whole lot of electrical devices, move them away from the bed. Make sure your Wi-Fi is off at night time, your phone is on airport mode, and more importantly, make sure you're not exposed to any bright light before bed. Your phone, TV, and computer is a bright, flickering blue light. Blue light is very, very detrimental to us in terms of our health and what we're trying to achieve here. So, and it is everywhere. So on your phone, most phones these days, and especially iPhone, do have a night shift setting, which turns your screen orange. There are some great programs you can download for your computers which do the same thing. They turn your screen orange rather than the bright blue, because the bright blue light is what drives cortisol up and suppresses melatonin. So that's an important one to really get under control too. The temperature of the room is also important. Keeping it slightly cooler does help, but again, you're going to have to sort of do a little bit of a trial and error on that one, because everyone is quite different with that as well. And check some air. Make sure you do have some fresh air in the room. Use some plants, for example. Plants are great for detoxifying the air, and there's some certain ones you can ask us and we'll be able to point you in the right direction with that one, to make sure that throughout the night the environment is perfect for sleeping. So we're helping the recovery process. And remember, that nighttime is so important because it's about making sure the body can start to repair and build itself and start putting everything back into balance, into homeostasis. So there's a very quick overview of how sleep, how important it is, but how hormones can affect sleep, and how effects can, and all the effects can also affect your hormones as well. So hopefully you got a bit out of that one. We're going to be moving on to the immune system next. So that's our next tutorial. And again, we'll try and break it down into a couple of different subcategories after that. So we're trying to dive into some different areas. So feel free to share this with some friends or a family or someone who might be having some issues with sleep, or they're struggling with getting the results they're after, and maybe they're neglecting this whole sleep side of things. You'd be surprised how many people do. It's probably the easiest thing to do to achieve your results, but for some reason, most people just don't get the sleep. It's so simple. So we look forward to seeing you guys on the next video tutorial. See you then.